The Ukrainian forces continued their major operation. They started in the spring without interruption, adding another success to their list. Every day, the Kiev forces liberated one more village on the southern front, while the desperate retreat of the Russians continued. Moreover, the Russian authorities have confirmed the undeniable achievements of Ukraine. An official appointed by Russia stated that Ukraine has captured a village on the Zaporizhzhia front, according to a Russian-appointed official and sources. Ukraine captured the village of Piada at the western end of the Zaporizhzhia front, as stated by Vladimir Rogov, Russia's commissioned representative for the region, in a statement on Telegram on Sunday morning. According to his statement, there were heavy clashes between Ukrainian and Russian forces, resulting in the Ukrainian forces gaining operational control of the village. The Kiev forces' wave-like attacks have yielded results. Despite enormous casualties, the Ukrainian forces continued to dig trenches in the area under Russian artillery fire. Russian military blogger War Gonzo also reported that Piada Kaki was abandoned. According to statements from both War Gonzo and Rogov, Ukrainian forces are also carrying out heavy artillery fire against Russian forces. There has been no comment on the subject from Ukrainian civil or military officials. Authorities often post videos of flag hoisting instead of providing clear explanations. They tend to take the time to verify success on the battlefield through these videos. So, how strategically important is the village of Piada Kaki? The Kiev forces had recently liberated a settlement called Lubok from the Russian invaders. The village of Piada Kaki is located about 1.25 miles southeast of Lobkov. It is 90 miles south of the village of Melitopol. Piada Kaki is on the way to the ski city. Melitopol is one of the crucial points of great importance for the course of the war. Therefore, Piada Kaki is not just a simple village. On the contrary, it holds tremendous strategic importance. If the authorities clearly state that Piada Kaki has been captured by the Kiev forces, it shows that Ukraine is on the right track in its counteroffensive. It will also be proof that they have added another victory to their success over the Russians. The Ukrainian forces have launched attacks on various points along the southern front. It is also believed that the counterattack began about 2 weeks ago with an attack on Bakhmut in the east. The greatest advance since the start of the Great Offensive was made about 4 miles south of Velika Novosilka. The Russian forces choose to place weaker forces on the front line, which they refer to as the zero line for Ukrainian troops. However, when their opponents believe they have made progress, they adopt the strategy of counterattacking with more experienced soldiers. Russian air campaigns also confirm this strategy. Initially, this strategy seemed to work. However, after Ukraine consolidated control, they have held the villages until now. Ukrainian soldiers also testify that commanders are trying to minimize casualties as they advance. However, there are no concrete casualty figures to support these statements. According to some well-known Russian bloggers, Ukraine has large military reserves outside of Piada Kaki. Most of these military units are infantry, but some armored units are also available. So, has the real offensive of the Ukrainian forces started, or are they just checking the enemy's pulse? Ukraine is launching a series of attacks to expose weaknesses in Russia's positions. However, the general opinion is that at some point, a main offensive will be launched involving 2 or more brigades. The statements of Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister, Hanna Maliar, also confirm this theory. According to Maliar's statements, British tanks are ready, loaded, and armed, but they are waiting for the right time to attack. The troops seen are only a small part of the 12 brigades that Kiev is preparing for the Great Spring Offensive. Some of the Western-trained brigades have already engaged in combat over the past 2 weeks, but others have yet to be seen at the front. So, the real storm hasn't broken out yet. Moreover, there are indications that armored vehicles supplied by the West, such as the British Challenger 2 tanks, will be used more in this offensive. The £5 million Challenger 2 was designed to attack other tanks. Additionally, it has much greater range and accuracy compared to the Kremlin's equivalent tanks. This fleet was gifted by the United Kingdom earlier this year, with the purpose of showing unwavering support to Ukraine in the West's struggle against the Russian occupation. The British military has described it as having precision, direct fire, and anti-tank maneuverability, and they claim it's the UK's only guaranteed 24-hour all-weather mobile tank. The Challenger 2 battle tanks were praised as excellent by Ukraine's defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov, when they first arrived in March. Of course, this is not the only aid Ukraine has received from the West. An image was published on June 10, 2023, by the press service of the Russian Ministry of Defense. In these images, German Leopard and American Bradley infantry fighting vehicles were destroyed in the conflict in the Zaporizhia region in southern Ukraine. Advancing with determination through counterattacks, Ukraine appears to be facing heavy resistance in its fight to liberate Russian-occupied territories that were brutally taken from them during a 16-month occupation. Ukraine is also dealing with Russia's monstrous new tactic of filling suicide tanks with explosives and driving them towards Kiev soldiers from afar. Still, it is too early to have optimistic expectations. Ukraine's modest gains over the past 2 weeks are still a few kilometers away from Russia's main line of defense. It is also unclear whether Kiev can make the kind of breakthrough that would cause panic in the Kremlin. But the Kiev forces continue to do their best. A Ukrainian official from the Odessa military administration said that the army destroyed a very important ammunition depot overnight. This warehouse was located near the Russian-occupied port city of Henichesk. Explosions can be heard in videos on social media, while a large cloud of smoke rises on the horizon with bullets flying into the sky. Attacks on logistics areas using long-range missiles or drones are considered critical to Ukraine's effort to weaken Russia's resilience. It is also stated that the Russian forces are carrying out relatively effective defensive operations in the south of Ukraine, although the Ukrainian forces are advancing decisively on the fronts they have opened. Ukrainian forces have opened a new page in this long and difficult war. The purpose of this operation was ambitious, overcoming Russia's defensive barriers, cutting off its forces and isolating them, liberating Ukrainian towns and villages captured by the Russians in 2022, and ideally regaining full control of the Crimean Peninsula, were the main objectives of the counteroffensive. Meanwhile, the political aims were to force the Kremlin from a position of strength to negotiate on NATO's terms. 3 weeks have passed since the start of the counter-operation. So what has Ukraine achieved in counter-offensive operations? Ukrainian soldiers touted their gains last week and waved flags in the settlements of Novogeorgiyevka Livny, Storagev, Mukievka, Blagodany, Lukovo, Niskichny, and Piada Kaki. Thus, 8 villages were liberated from the Russian occupation and regained their freedom. Ukraine's deputy defense minister, Heinmeier, said that within 2 weeks Ukrainian forces had retaken 43 mi and advanced more than 4 miles. Heinmeier also talked about other aspects of the war, saying that additional troops were advancing in the direction of Bakhmut, and that Russia continued to attack in the direction of Lyman, Kupiansk, Avdiivka, and Marinka. Last week, Kiev troops are advancing with small but critical gains. This advance causes Russian troops to be cornered on the front lines. Also, the main move of the counterattack was focused on the front line near the town of Orakov, where Ukrainian forces attacked the Russian defensive positions with impressive persistence and determination. The other major war sector was near Bakhmut, where the Ukrainians made some progress in recapturing the city from the Russians. The Orakov region has been very active lately, and the most violent clashes of the front line are taking place here. Pilot instructor, Roman citizen, Colonel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the other day also announced that the Orakov region is the most violent direction. According to Tsvetin, this region is the shortest route to supply equipment and military machinery. Therefore, this area will be the main springboard for burning Russian troops. The Russians transferred their main units here, which were released after the explosion of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station. For this reason, the Ukrainian armed forces launched a shower of missiles at the Russian positions in the Orakov region. The Ukrainian armed forces fires up to 240 missiles per hour at the Russian army's positions on the Orakov-Robertino line. About 5 to 6 full salvos per hour from the Grad multiple launch rocket system are reported to be recorded in this area. At the same time, the artillery of Ukraine continues its active operations without calming down even for a short time. In addition, the active operation of Ukrainian armored vehicles in this area is observed. According to sources, the Ukrainian armed forces attack all types of targets, including small groups of Russian troops, without neglecting the use of large-caliber weapons. Despite the serious aggravation of the situation as a whole is considered difficult. However, Russian sources claim that the missile shower was not critical. This situation in this area has recently become the norm. Military correspondents predict a possible attack of the infantry of the armed forces of Ukraine, which will precede the artillery preparation. It was noted that the Russian troops are ready to repel any attack and take all necessary measures to ensure the security and stability of the defense in this direction. On the other hand, the Russian formations shot down by the Ukrainian armed forces are not limited to positions. Russia's much talked about Ka-52 helicopter warships are hit a lot. It may not be a coincidence that Moscow's top attack helicopter has taken a series of bad hits over the past few days, and that a month ago Canada sent a really good missile to Ukraine without telling exactly how. Ukrainian military sources reported that Russia's top-of-the-line helicopter, the $16 million Ka-52 Alligator, was shot down over Ukraine at a rate better than one plane a day. Ukrainian Air Defense Force operators shot down 5 Kamov Ka-52 attack helicopters between June 16th and 19th. The Air Force said in a statement, "As it is known, Ukraine's air defense units are responsible for protecting the national airspace and operating various systems, from warplanes to land-based anti-aircraft missiles and artillery batteries." The official Kiev statement, broadcast on the Air Force's Telegram channel, only confirmed that one clash took place on the next front at around 2,300 on June 19th. Russian-controlled media claimed that Ka-52 warships destroyed 3 German Leopard, 2 tanks, and 11 U.S.-made Bradley infantry fighting vehicles in a night ambush south of Orikhiv on June 10th. Official Ukrainian statements acknowledged some of the casualties, but said most of the hit vehicles would be recovered and repaired. The Kremlin-backed Vitovko information platform reported that a 6th Ka-52, also operating in Ukraine, received a direct missile hit on its tail but was able to return to base. Other sources have released a video showing a Ka-52 flying with all of its tail flown, but not directly linking the damaged aircraft to combat operations in Ukraine. Also, from the start of the war, the Ukrainian armed forces used a mix of Soviet-era vehicle-mounted anti-aircraft guns and handheld anti-aircraft missiles donated by Kiev's Western allies to fight Kremlin forces. According to the estimate of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Army, Ukrainian soldiers have shot down 306 Russian helicopters since February 2022 using various weapons. By April 2023, Ukrainian authorities publicly warned that stockpiles of handheld anti-aircraft missiles such as the shoulder-fired Igla were falling. Authorities reported that Russian helicopter warships could soon operate above battlefields with almost impunity. Stocks of the US-made Stinger, the putative NATO handheld anti-aircraft missile, are reportedly at critically low levels after more than a year of delivery to Ukraine and limited production in the US. By the end of April, the Latvian army had emptied all its stockpiles and transported all its Stingers to Ukraine. One of the interim measures was Canada's decision in late May to deliver 43 M9 missiles, a tested anti-aircraft weapon developed by the United States, to Ukraine. The Norwegian US-built NASAMS ground-based launch system can also fire the AIM-9 according to open sources. Ukraine currently uses 2 NASAMS systems, one donated by the US and the other by Canada. In another development, the Kiev army announced that Russian forces lost 23 artillery systems and more than 1,000 fighters in Ukraine in the last 24 hours. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces said in a statement that the Moscow army had lost 10 casualties last day. This brings Kiev's Russian casualty tally since February 24, 2022 to 221,460. The Joint Chiefs of Staff claimed that Kremlin fighters lost a total of 3,888 artillery systems over the same time period. Artillery plays a key role in the ongoing war and is high in Ukraine's list of seeking military assistance from its international backers. As is known, the war in Ukraine turned into an artillery war. Ukraine is researching and testing Russia's defenses. Both Kiev and Moscow are looking for the whereabouts of each other's artillery, as well as high-value assets such as command posts. Both sides are trying to reach behind each other's lines with long-range firepower and try to gain the upper hand in this artillery duel. It remains unclear which side will prevail in these duels. However, if we look at the situation on the front lines, we can see that these duels are progressing in favor of Ukraine. Ukrainian forces managed to inflict heavy blows on the Russian troops on the front lines, both with artillery and rocket fire. Russian troops are not able to protect their positions or the areas they have previously captured. The consequences of Russia's war against Ukraine deeply shook not only these countries, but also Eastern Europe and the world. This relentless war often faces the danger of crossing the borders between the two countries. In particular, the name of a Slavic state, Belarus, is often heard in this war. Belarus is of geopolitical importance as it borders Russia in the east and Ukraine in the south. Belarus is perhaps one of the countries that felt the effects of the Ukrainian war the most. How might the Ukrainian war have affected Belarus? Let's find an answer to this question together with the situations in Belarus. While relations between Belarus and Russia were progressing on a policy of balance, allegations of an attack on the Russian A-50 radar aircraft emerged in Belarus. There was a lot of buzz about an alleged attack on a Russian A-50 mainstay airborne early warning and control aircraft deployed at Mykulishchi Air Base south of Minsk, Belarus. Few would have guessed that this buzz would happen, but a total of 3 explosions occurred near the Mykulishchi Air Base in Belarus. While one of these explosions took place during the night hours, 2 explosions took place in the morning hours. According to preliminary data, as a result of the attack, the front and middle pots of the Russian A-50 mainstay airborne early warning and control aircraft, as well as a very important radar complex, were damaged. The attack was carried out using unmanned aerial vehicles. In addition, it was learned that military transport planes and snow removal vehicles were also damaged in the drone attack. It was reported that a bag containing drone remote controls was found near the area after the attack. As various media reports, a group of Ukrainian-linked Belarusian partisans claimed responsibility for blowing up one of Russia's most important planes earlier today. The incident occurred while the Russian Aerospace Forces A-50 UANC aircraft was parked at Mykulishchi Air Base in Belarus. The distinctive aircraft, believed to be worth £250 million, was used to identify bombing targets by Putin's Air Force. The damage to the £250 million A-50 mainstay aircraft was a significant loss for the Russian Air Force. The alleged attack was allegedly carried out by partisan groups in Belarus. If this is the case, it may be a new sign that these groups are becoming active. It's worth noting that Ukraine also has its own agents working behind the lines. The situation on the territory of Belarus was not the first felt effects of the war. In the past months, the winds of war have blown in Belarus. At least 8 explosions were heard near the Zubrovka military airport in the southeastern Homolia region of Belarus. This base is approximately 30 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. At the same time, this military base was used by Russia to strike Ukraine. It is also alleged that Russia has placed Iskander and S-400 mobile missile systems at the Belarus airport and used them to strike Ukraine. In the statement made by the Ministry of Defense of Belarus, it was stated that as a result of the explosion, the engine of a military vehicle caught fire and fire extinguishing measures were taken. In addition, the Belarusian Ministry of Defense reported that there were no casualties. The incident came after a series of explosions at a Russian air base in Ukraine's occupied Crimea region that destroyed at least 9 Russian military aircraft. Kiev has not publicly claimed responsibility for the attack. Russia's Ministry of Defense denied that the Saki base in Crimea was attacked and described the explosions as a violation of fire safety requirements. As it's known, no regular force of Belarus has attacked Ukraine. Belarusian leader Lukashenko tried to intimidate Kiev by warning that Belarus would join Russia if attacked. However, the Belarusian leader did not hesitate to express his side in the Ukraine war with his words and stance. It is clear that Lukashenko is in the position of an ally of Putin. If Lukashenko does not change his course, Belarus cannot avoid mysterious attacks. Could the attacks on Belarusian soil be a retaliation for Lukashenko's threats? We will wait and see what will happen in the triangle of Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine in the coming days. Now let's turn our direction to Russia. How are the effects of the Ukraine war felt in Russia? Russia has again surrendered to explosions and flames. The video, shared on social media, shows the aftermath of an explosion at a natural gas pipeline in Russia. A huge pillar of fire was visible in the 49-second video taken from afar. It was also reported that the explosion took place in the town of Pelham in the north of Russia, Sverdlovsk Oblast. Pelham is approximately 1,500 kilometers east of Moscow and 470 kilometers north of the Siberian Energy Center. Tumen, as it's known, many mysterious explosions have occurred in Russia since the beginning of the Ukraine war. It was claimed that partisans or Ukraine were behind these mysterious explosions. Could it be the Ukrainian partisans who targeted the gas pipeline? In the town of Pelham, the Russian energy giant Gazprom sharply denied this claim. Gazprom said that part of the Yamburg-Yelets-1 gas pipeline caught fire during repairs, but there were no interruptions in supply or loss of life, Gazprom told TASS news agency. When the destruction occurred, the gas pipeline section was closed for repair and was not included in the gas transport. On the other hand, despite the lack of evidence of sabotage, a series of unexplained explosions have occurred since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. These include incidents at ammunition depots and military installations on Russian territory, often close to the Ukrainian border. Russia blamed Ukraine for some of the explosions, although Kiev denied any involvement in the incident. For example, in early March, explosions occurred near the headquarters of the FSB Border Guard Service in the city of Rostov-on-Don, located about 120 kilometers from the Russian-Ukrainian border and about 32 kilometers from the strategic Sea of Azov. At least one person was killed and 2 were injured in an explosion and fire in a building belonging to Russia's FSB security service in the southern city of Rostov-on-Don. According to Russian news agencies, footage shared by various accounts on social media showed thick black smoke rising into the air near residential buildings and a shopping mall in Rostov, the capital of a region adjacent to areas of eastern Ukraine where conflicts with Russia are raging. The FSB, whose duties include internal security and the fight against terrorism, said in a statement that fuel and mineral oils ignited in a workshop, causing an explosion and a partial collapse of the building where the border patrol section is located. Rostov Governor Vasily Golubev stated that the fire started from the electrical contact, and the surrounding buildings were evacuated while the fire was burning. On the other hand, Moscow has sometimes accused Kiev of carrying out cross-border attacks with drones. Last month, President Vladimir Putin instructed the FSB to do more to counter the increasing espionage and sabotage by Ukraine and the West. In summary, Russia's important centers and strategic assets are burning with the fire of Putin's arrogance. If Vladimir Putin does not end the Ukraine war, the war may spread to both Russia and Belarus.